What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Priscilla. I'm a Nigerian women's wear designer based in the UK. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew a 8 pieces maxi skirt. This skirt is so cool and so easy to create, and I'm going to be showing you how to make the pattern in the first part of this video. Then I show you how to sew the skirt as well. The skirt has a waistband and it has pockets, so you know is value for money and value for your time. But before we get into the tutorial, I just wanted to cover a few things that I thought were very important to talk about. The first one is there is so much pain, there is so much hurt, and there's just so much going on in the world right now that even going on social media seems like a very difficult thing to do. Going from the uprising about race, Black Lives Matter, the raping and killing of young innocent women, and let's never forget, Auntie Rona has not even left the chat. So there is just so much going on, and if you can do anything, no matter your race, no matter your gender, to help the person next to you despite of their race or gender, do it. It doesn't cost you anything. It could be a post you share, it could be a donation, it could be a petition you sign. If you want to go out and join the riots, feel free to do so. But what I would say is do it in the capacity that doesn't harm your well-being, that doesn't harm your mental health, and doesn't make you feel any type of negative way. So with that being said, I'm going to be having a giveaway this month. I'm going to be giving away £100 cash to one person. Make sure to watch this video up until the end to find out how to enter the giveaway. The winner will be announced on the 14th of June. I just wanted to do something to give back in my own capacity, and hopefully this prize would come in handy to whoever the winner is. So let's get into this tutorial. If you enjoyed, please give this video a thumbs up and let's get started. Starting off, you need to take the following measurements to create this skirt. You need to measure around your waistline as well as how long you want the skirt to be. So because the skirt has 8 panels, you would need to divide your waist measurements by 8 to get the individual size that one panel is going to be along the waistline. So we need to make the following patterns, but first off, these are the tools we're going to be working with. I have my pattern paper here, my pattern master, my pen, my tape measure, my paper and fabric scissors, some pins, and then for fabric I am going to be working with this green and white Ankara print, which is nice and light in printed cotton because it is summer, therefore it is hot. I also have some interfacing to fuse my waistband to make it nice and stiff. The first pattern we're going to be making is for the actual skirt panel. You would need to roll out about 1 meter wide of paper for this. So I'm starting off with this area here. I'm going to be drawing a short horizontal line like so, and then I'm going to be marking that 1/8 of your waistline measurement. So mine is 3.6 inches, and we're going to be marking it along that horizontal line there, as well as mark the middle of that dimension. So along that middle point, we're going to be drawing a long vertical line, and along that vertical line you would need to mark the skirt length. So I'm just grabbing my tape measure here and I'm marking how long I want my skirt to be. I decided to work with about 37 inches, which is just at my ankles, so I can wear it with both flats and heels. Next up, I'm marking 3 inches above the hemline along that our long vertical line, and I'm going to be extending outwards by 8 inches. So just keep in mind that the wider you make this particular point, the fuller and bigger your skirt is going to be. So if you want a really exaggerated full circle skirt, feel free to make that bottom piece as wide as you would like. Next up, I'm going to connect it back to our waistline. I'm repeating it for the other side as well, extending by 8 inches and then drawing a diagonal line or slanted line, connecting it back to that our waist measurement. So next up, I'm going to draw a curved hem that sort of goes deeper at the bottom of the skirt hem and sort of tips up towards that sort of 8-inch extension point. This shape is going to help to create the scalloped hemline that the skirt design has. So I'm just finishing off that line like so with my pattern master and my pen, and once that is done and you're happy with the outcome, you can go ahead and add your seam allowance all the way around this pattern. I like to work with 1 centimeter. You can feel free to work with 1/2 inch or 1 inch, whatever you are comfortable with. So I'm just adding that 1 cm seam allowance around the sides, the bottom, and along the waistline as well, because this particular pattern you would use to cut your 8 panels for the skirt. Next up, I went ahead to cut out my pattern piece like so, cutting along the edge of our seam allowance, adding annotations, what this pattern piece is, as well as my grain line. And then I'm going to move on to the second pattern piece, which is going to be the waistband pattern. So this is essentially going to be a rectangle that measures your waistline measurement along this direction, and then the width is going to be how wide you want your waistband to be. So I'm marking my waistline measurement, which is 29 at the moment. Thank Jesus I haven't crossed into 30 yet because of lockdown. And then the width for me that I'm working with is 4.5 inches. I like to have sort of like a medium wide size waistband. Don't like anything too wide when it comes to this style of skirt. So I've marked that 4.5 inches all the way across, and I'm just drawing in the other side of the waistband and then connecting the sides for both ends like so. So after doing this, I'm going to go back in and add a 1 centimeter side seam allowance, because this is going to allow me to fix a zip on the side of the skirt. So I'm just adding annotations, grain lines, and then going ahead to cut out my waistband pattern piece. Next up, I'm going to be working on the pocket pattern, which is going to sit into the seam on the front of the skirt. And the type of pocket I'm just doing is a simple pocket that is straight along the sides like so. Mine is about 6 inches wide, so it's nice and open. And then I like to draw by freehand this shape that would be able to take your full arm or your full palm when you put your hand in the pocket. After doing that by freehand, I'll go in again with a pattern master and pen to refine my lines. You can do this with pencil, you can do this with pen, whatever works for you. But after doing that, I'm just going back in to add a seam allowance of 1 centimeter all the way around the sides, around the edges, and as well add how many pieces I'll need to cut of this. So for this particular style of pocket, you will need to cut a pair each for 1 pocket, because when they are joined along that curved end, it makes a pocket bag that sits into the seam of your skirt. So once that is done, I'm just going to go back in and cut out my pocket pattern, and that would be the last pattern piece that you need for the skirt design. Making the patterns is relatively straightforward because the skirt design is not very complex and is relatively beginner friendly. So once you have all of your pattern pieces ready, feel free to pin them onto fabric and cut your pieces. Because I don't like to waste time on things, I literally folded my fabric in such a way that I cut all 8 layers in one go. You can cut 1 panel at a time, you can cut a pair at a time, whatever works for you. But as you can see here, I just folded my fabric piece in such a way that I cut multiple pieces at once. It just saves time like that. I did the same thing for my pocket pieces, cutting my 2 pairs in one go, and then I cut 1 piece of my waistband. So these are all of my skirt panels here. I have my main skirt piece, which I have a total of 8 pieces of. And then for my waistband, I just cut 1 piece, but I went ahead to iron some interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. So that just gives the waistband a lot more stability when it's sewn into the waistline of the skirt. So now that we have all of our pieces ready to go, I just went ahead to overlock all of my skirt panels along the side, the bottom, and this just made assembly a whole lot easier because I didn't have to think about going back to overlock even the pockets itself. I just overlocked everything all the way around, and then when it was time to sew, I knew I was just joining panels together. The first step for sewing is putting two panels together. I'm going to join them right sides together, and this first seam is going to become your center front seam. So after doing that, I'm going to put it open like so we have a pair joined together, and then we're going to be working the pockets into the seam. So I'm going to be putting the pocket 4 inches down from the waistline. This I just like to mark with a pin, and then I grab my pocket piece and align it to that 4-inch mark. So I do this for this particular edge and for the other edge. Since this is going to become the front of the skirt, I'm going to pin all of my pocket pieces in place and then stitch them all up before coming back to join up that seam. So I'm just repeating the same thing for the other panels that sit on the extreme left and extreme right of our front, because these panels are going to be helpful when it comes to actually creating your pocket bag. So I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to be sewing up that pocket edge to the edges of the skirt panels in question, and I'm just sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm going to repeat the same thing for all of the panels involved. Now, to ensure that the pocket bag stays tucked inside of the seam, I like to always go back and do a tiny edge stitch that keeps the pocket seam sort of flat on this side. So this is what it looks like, and it just makes the finishing a lot nicer and neater. So I'm going to do this for all the sides concerned, and then I'm going to be grabbing the panels that already have their pocket pieces stitched and pressed in place, and we're going to be sewing in such a way that we start from the waistline, we sew down, and then we sew around the pocket bag, make its way up and then down to the hemline of the skirt. That way you have the opening for your pockets in place and you have your pocket already stitched and sort of ready to go. So when you make your way to this edge of the pocket, you sort of leave your needle in, lift your footer up, and then turn your garment in such a way that you can continue to sew around the pocket bag till you get to this bottom edge. You leave your needle in again, you turn your fabric around, and then you sew your way all the way down to the hemline of the skirt. You will need to do this for both pockets, so for the left and for the right hand side. So I gave my piece a nice press, and this is what the front part of the skirt is looking like. It's already looking really nice and tidy, really beautiful print as well. For the back, I went ahead to pin together the remaining 4 panels, so I have one piece that I can attach to my front, and I'm just sewing all of those panels on a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And because we've already overlocked prior to sewing, we don't have to think about going back to overlock the seam again. So after doing all of the stitching, I gave all of those seams a nice press, pressing everything nice and open, and then we're going to be joining just one side of the skirt because I want to put the zip on the other side. So we're going to be sewing up this side, which is towards the bottom of the screen, and don't forget to leave the other side open because if you stitch it closed, you have to unpick it to fix your zip. So now that we have our side stitched and ready, I'm going to be going back to my waistband and I'm going to be pressing my waistband in half, so that way I can stitch this waistband into the waistline of the skirt before attaching the zip. So now I'm just using some steam with my Phillip iron and I'm just ironing my waistband in half like so. And once this is all done, I'm going to take this back to my skirt piece, pin it into the waistline of the skirt, and then stitch it in place. So now that I have my waistband pressed and ready to be attached to the waistline of the skirt, I'm starting from this edge like so. I'm pinning this edge to that side of the skirt waist, repeating the same thing for the other side, and I'm just going to go in and pin the rest of the waistband into the waistline of the skirt. I'm going to be sewing the waistband into the skirt on a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and after stitching this waistband in, I'm going to overlock it afterwards. Just remember to ensure to check that you are actually stitching the waistband to the skirt, because the worst thing that can happen is you stitch your way all the way to the end and realize the waistline of the skirt escaped at some point when you were sewing. So just remember to always lift your skirt piece and check from time to time. So after doing that, I'm just going in to overlock the waistline as well as the edge of the waistband, so it's ready for the zip to be attached to that open side seam of the skirt. So feel free to give this particular seam a nice press to relax all of the stitching and the folding of the fabric. And then I'm going to be grabbing my zip. I decided to use an invisible zip instead of the one I showed earlier in this video, because it just worked a lot nicer in my opinion, because the fabric has a lot of black in it and it's going to be on the side, so it'll be very visible when I wear this skirt. So I'm just pinning my invisible zip into the open seam on the side like so, and using a narrow zip footer, I'm going to be sewing the zip into the side seam of the skirt. I have a dedicated tutorial where I show you like step by step how to sew an invisible zip into a center back side seam using this particular footer. I'm going to link it somewhere on the screen if you haven't seen that already. So I'm just finishing off the zip into the side seam of the skirt like so, making my way all the way to the top, and once I reach the top, not forgetting to do my back stitch to secure the seam. After this, I went ahead to close off that side seam where we fix our zip along the bottom, and I stitched from the hemline all the way to the point where the zip sort of like stops. So once that is done, that was the last step I did for this particular skirt design. I left the hemline the way it was, overlocked like that. But if you want to have an even better finish, I highly recommend you cut like lining pieces using the same pattern, and then you can finish off the hemline of your skirt with the hemline of your lining. You also have the freedom to stitch in a really beautiful like lace or embroidery detail along that scalloped edge. I hope you guys actually enjoyed watching this video. I have been dying and wanting to try out this skirt design for the longest time, and if you want the skirt to stand even more, you can fuse the skirt pieces themselves with some interlining, add some boning along the skirt panels and along the base to make it really stand nice and bold. But if you enjoyed this video, please let me know down below. Give this video a thumbs up, and as I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm going to be having a giveaway, and I'm going to be giving away £100 cash to one of you guys. To enter, all you have to do is to subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at KimDaveDesigns, and comment below one good thing that has happened to you this year. The winner will be announced on the 14th of June at 6 p.m. GMT on the KimDave community page. 2020 has been a hell of a year, and I just wanted to give back one way or the other, and if this is a little I can do, then I'm happy to do it. So I'll be selecting one person randomly, and then the winner will be announced on the 14th of June. But until then, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.